What do primitive monkeys, the political hierarchy of Mao Zedong, and the green ink printed on the back of a U.S. dollar bill all have in common?
I mean, that is quite the list to start with.
Right. It sounds like a joke setup. But according to one incredibly specific and honestly highly controversial philosophical text, those things are actually the ultimate proof of why human civilizations rise and why they inevitably collapse.
Yeah, it is a truly profound shift in perspective.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are taking you on a journey into a worldview that completely flips our normal understanding of history right on its head. I mean, instead of looking at, supply chains or military tactics to explain the fall of an empire, we are looking at something deeply abstract.
Exactly. We are going to be unpacking a text by an author named Suefeng, and it's been translated and edited by Konglong and Alien. And I should warn you, the overarching work has this massive, sweeping title.
Oh yeah, it really does.
It's called There is a Supernatural Soul in the Universe, 40 Evidence Proving the Existence of the Greatest Creator.
Quite the title. And, before we really get into the weeds here, we need to be crystal clear with you listening. Our mission today is absolutely not to endorse this author's worldview.
Right. That's an important disclaimer.
We aren't here to, validate or debunk the religious or spiritual claims made in this text.
Yeah.
You should just think of us as your impartial guides, walking you through a very complex, very fascinating museum exhibit.
Exactly. We are solely analyzing the architecture of the argument. And out of the 40 pieces of evidence presented in this giant thesis, we're really zooming all the way in on just evidence number 40, which is titled The Rise and Decline of Human Civilization.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to build this case, Suefeng takes us on a genuinely wild intellectual ride. We're going to explore why science might actually be a trap, and why relying on traditional gods is framed as a fatal error.
And what this all means for the anxiety you might feel when you're just doom scrolling the news today.
Yes, the doom scrolling is real. So to set the stage here, what is the central thesis? How does this author even define civilization?
Well, the argument establishes a really foundational premise. It defines civilization as the absolute crystallization of human wisdom. And its emergence, its whole rise, is driven entirely by one undisputed engine, which is the progress of science and technology.
Okay, so without that technological momentum, there is just no civilization, period.
Right. And this is exactly where those monkeys you mentioned come into play.
Wait, really? The monkeys are the proof for this.
Yeah, the text points out that primates, like monkeys and gorillas, they actually have a much longer historical footprint on this planet than humans do. But because they completely lack the capacity for scientific and technological development, they remain frozen.
Frozen in a primitive stage, right? Because
Yeah.
they don't have science. So science is the ultimate differentiator.
Exactly. And Shuifeng builds this premise not just on biology, but on some pretty extensive historical surveys, too.
Like what kind of surveys?
Well, the text leans on works like Hendrik van Loon's The Story of Mankind and Ukiu's A Sigh of a Thousand Years. And by analyzing the Egyptians, the Maya, the Persians, the Greeks, the Roman Empire,
Basically all the big ones.
all of them, Islamic civilization, the rise of Britain, the conclusion drawn is that technological progress is the literal lifeblood of a rising society. It is the thing that pulls us out of the caves.
Okay, let me try to visualize this.
Yeah.
It sounds like science and technology act as a massively powerful engine in a high-end sports car.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right, they provide sheer horsepower. They propel humanity forward out of the primitive stage and give us speed, power, momentum.
Momentum is the key word there.
But the core tension of this text seems to ask, what happens if you build this roaring, incredibly powerful engine, but you completely forget to install a steering wheel?
That analogy actually captures the danger perfectly. Think of science as the engine. It gives you that momentum, but momentum, by its very nature, is completely blind.
Doesn't know where it's going.
Exactly. A steering wheel, which the text calls an eternal spirit or an eternal belief, it doesn't just point the car. It forces you to acknowledge that there are boundaries, guardrails, other cars on the road.
So without it, your speed just becomes your weapon, and
Yeah.
eventually your cause of death.
Precisely.
So what does that crash actually look like on a societal level? How does losing that steering wheel translate to, say, the fall of Rome or the collapse of a huge empire?
Well, it manifests as unchecked hubris. The text argues that when a nation's productivity and technology become highly developed without that eternal belief as a guide, the society just becomes frighteningly arrogant.
Arrogant in what way?
Well, the citizens look around at their skyscrapers, their weapons, their sprawling infrastructure, and they start to feel that they are the greatest creator.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, their egos just inflate. They begin to despise everything else and believe that they alone have the power to either save or conquer the entire world.
They just start believing their own hype. They think they're completely invincible.
And that inflation is fatal. This self-aggrandizement inevitably leads them to try and impose their will on neighboring societies. They go to war, they extract resources, they conquer.
But the thesis argues this is a double-edged sword, doesn't it?
Absolutely. In the process of destroying the civilizations of others, they hollow themselves out. They ultimately cause their own decline and destruction. Science builds the grand city, but arrogance just burns it right to the ground.
Okay, so if science inevitably breeds arrogance, and arrogance inevitably breeds destruction, human history should just be one massive graveyard of empires.
You would think so, yeah.
But it's not. Some actually survived. So how does this worldview explain the outliers?
By analyzing their specific eternal anchors. The text argues that the societies with actual longevity possessed a deeply ingrained belief system that actively mitigated that arrogance.
Okay, it's like a cultural humblifier. Give me an example.
Sure. For instance, the text points to the survival of the Israeli nation through immense, centuries-long difficulties, and it attributes that survival directly to their support by the Bible.
Because it provided a constant psychological North Star.
Exactly.
But if the Bible was Israel's anchor, I have to imagine civilizations with massive pantheons, like India, for example, present a completely different psychological framework.
They do, and the text actually notes that Indian civilization has fluctuated significantly over time. But it argues that India persisted precisely because it was supported by Buddhism, Brahma, and the Emperor of Heaven.
So it wasn't just relying on sheer military might.
Right. And then, turning to Chinese civilization, the author points out its unique ability to persist for millennia. It avoided both the excessive aggressive strength that leads to conquering others and the excessive weakness that leads to being conquered.
And the text links that balance in China to a traditional philosophy, right? The correspondence between nature and humanity, or the unity of heaven and humanity.
That's the one.
But how does that actually work in practice? Like, how does an abstract philosophical concept stop a massive army from getting arrogant?
By functioning as that humblifier we talked about, but baked into the very highest levels of power. By believing heaven and humanity are intrinsically linked, Chinese civilization created this deep system of checks and balances.
Like spiritual checks and balances.
Yeah. If an emperor became too arrogant or despotic, and then a natural disaster like a flood or a famine occurred, it was interpreted as heaven withdrawing its mandate.
Oh, I see. So the philosophy meant that human power was never seen as absolute.
Exactly. That underlying fear kept the collective ego in check. It reminded the rulers and the people that they were not the supreme rulers of the universe.
Which brings us to the most surprising modern example in this entire deep dive. When analyzing the United States, which, by the way, the text calls the most powerful emerging civilization today, it doesn't credit America's success to its military, or its vast geography, or even Silicon Valley.
No, it doesn't.
It claims the main reason for the rise of U.S. civilization is the phrase, "In God we trust," specifically highlighting how it's printed right there on the back of the dollar bill.
Yeah, the placement there is deeply symbolic, but also highly practical within this framework.
I mean, think about it. Money is the ultimate tool of earthly power.
Right. By stamping "In God We Trust" onto the physical manifestation of wealth and capitalism, it serves as a daily psychological reminder. It injects this mandatory dose of humility right into the transaction of power.
But the author uses that observation to issue a very stark, very dire warning for America's future, don't they?
Oh, a completely uncompromising warning. The text states clearly that if the United States stops trusting in God and begins to trust only in itself, relying solely on its military strength and its technological engine, it will absolutely decline.
So the moment the U.S. lets go of that specific steering wheel, it's over.
It will fall victim to the exact same self-inflation that destroyed every major empire before it.
Wow. That really pivots the text from this detached historical review into an incredibly urgent modern critique. I mean, think about how you feel watching the news lately.
Oh, the constant dread.
Exactly. There's that underlying sense that technology is accelerating way faster than our wisdom to manage it.
Oh,
This author isn't just writing history. They're diagnosing our modern anxiety.
And to frame that anxiety, the text borrows a quote from the ancient philosopher Laozi. When people have no fear of force, then a great crisis will arrive.
A great crisis, like the historical Great Flood in the Bible.
Yes, but today, a flood feels almost quaint compared to the modern threats the author lists out.
Oh, for sure. We are talking about comet impacts, global nuclear war, biologically controlled robots. The text points out that humans are actively writing about these 10 major crises facing humanity. We know they're coming.
You can see them on the horizon.
But wait, that logic feels a little incomplete to me. Let's look at this through a modern secular lens for a second.
Okay, lay it on me.
If we're highly advanced and we're self-aware enough to identify nuclear threats and rogue AI, why can't the exact same science that built the AI just code an off switch? Why do we specifically need a greatest creator to solve a mechanical or mathematical problem?
Because a math problem doesn't account for human hubris.
What do you mean?
The text argues that modern society has developed a massive, fatal blind spot. We view the concept of a greatest creator as just mere religious superstition, right? A relic of the past that deviates from cold, hard science.
Why, it's not empirical.
Exactly. And because we dismiss it, we don't factor a higher power into our risk assessments at all. Science tries to solve the problem of the rogue AI, sure, but it doesn't solve the arrogance of the humans who refuse to start pushing the boundaries in the first place.
Oh, man. We think we are the players in charge of the entire board game.
Yes. And by ignoring the greatest creator, by believing we are the ultimate masters of the earth, the author paints this really vivid picture. We are basically behaving like a herd of elephants.
Elephants.
Yeah, imagine these massive creatures stomping through a forest, completely oblivious to the existence of humans. They think their sheer size and weight make them invincible, so they just act recklessly, destroying the ecosystem. But what those elephants don't realize is that humans, a higher, more capable intelligence, are watching them. And eventually, a punishment will arrive from a force the elephants lacked the capacity to even acknowledge.
That is a haunting visual.
Yeah.
The elephants don't comprehend the hunter until the consequence is right in front of them. So humanity is the elephant. Our science and technology is our sheer physical size, and we are just blindly stomping toward a cliff because we refuse to acknowledge a higher order.
That's the argument. The text even asks rhetorically if civilization must be destroyed at a certain stage of development. Like, is it just an inevitable, unbreakable cycle?
And what's the verdict?
The answer given is no. The continuation of civilization depends entirely on whether the greatest creator is in the hearts of humans. If that humility is present, development can continue indefinitely. But if not, destruction can happen at any given moment.
Okay, if the ultimate solution to surviving rogue AI and nuclear catastrophe is a spiritual anchor, that leads me to a really obvious question.
Go for it.
Can't we just pick one? I mean, if a society just needs something above them to keep them humble, shouldn't any traditional religion or pantheon of gods do the trick?
You'd think so, but the text is shockingly definitive on this point. The answer is no. Believing in just gods won't work. It's framed as this ineffective half measure.
Why, though? If the goal is simply humility, why wouldn't the Greek or Roman gods suffice?
Well, if we connect this back to the historical examples we talked about, those destroyed civilizations did believe in gods. The Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians, they all had massive pantheons. But those gods didn't save them.
That's true. They still fell.
Right, and why? Because according to this worldview, lesser gods are not the supreme rulers of the universe. The text characterizes them almost like middle management.
Middle management gods. I love that.
It's so true, though. They are preoccupied, they frequently conflict with one another, and they just lack the ultimate authority to truly take care of us. The author even points to the fact that Jesus' 12 disciples all died as evidence that relying on figures beneath the absolute greatest creator doesn't guarantee earthly salvation.
And to really drive home how this spiritual hierarchy works, the author uses an incredibly specific, surprisingly modern political analogy here.
Oh yeah, this part is fascinating.
The text compares the necessity of acknowledging the greatest creator to the political survival dynamics of the Mao Zedong era in China.
That is such a wild way to explain theology. How does the text break down that political analogy exactly?
It argues that during that specific era, if you wanted to survive and thrive, you had to raise the banner of Mao Zedong thought.
Right, the supreme leader.
Exactly. If you decided instead to raise the banner of a lesser official, like, say, Liu Shaoqi or Zhu Enlai, or just some local governor, not only would you fail to save yourself, but you would actually bring down the very banner you raised. You simply cannot appeal to a local mayor when the supreme leader dictates the reality of the entire country.
The universe, in this framework, operates on a remarkably strict chain of command. Appealing to a lesser god is literally like appealing to a local governor during a nationwide regime change. It simply lacks the ultimate authority required to intervene and save a civilization from its own collapse.
And so Feng applies this exact same strict jurisdiction critique to Buddhism too, right?
Yes, the critique of Buddhism here is incredibly sharp. To illustrate the limitations of relying on Buddha for earthly salvation, the author quotes a traditional proverb.
I hear it.
When the mud statue crosses the river, it is difficult to save itself.
A mud statue dissolving as it tries to navigate the water. That implies total helplessness in the physical realm.
Exactly. Now, the text acknowledges that Buddha is a much higher life form, existing in what it calls the Elysium world. It even mentions that these beings have visited Earth in the past, made errors, and that the greatest creator actually forgave their wrongdoings.
Oh, interesting. So they are real in this framework, just lower down the ladder.
Right. But the crucial pragmatic point the author makes is about jurisdiction. Can Buddha actually take care of us here on Earth in the physical world?
And the text points to the intense historical persecution of Buddhism as proof that the answer is a resounding no.
Yes, the author cites the countless historical examples of temples being burned to the ground, monks being expelled. The text specifically highlights the story of the sixth patriarch of Buddhism.
What happened to him?
It notes that he couldn't even save himself from earthly political trouble. He had to hide among hunters for 15 years just to survive.
Wow.
So the logic presented is cold and incredibly practical. If Buddha cannot protect their own patriarchs and temples from destruction, how on earth can they save our entire civilization from a nuclear crisis?
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the author doesn't just dismiss Buddhism's power on Earth. They point out a massive contradiction in what followers actually want from it.
Oh yeah, the earthly desires versus spiritual goals.
Exactly. The text states that the entire theological purpose of believing in Buddha is to seek rebirth in the Elysium world after you die. It was never designed to help you thrive on Earth in the first place.
It's a striking observation about human nature. The text essentially tells the reader, look, if you want to enjoy all the material pleasures and technological achievements of earthly life, and you also expect to go to the Elysium world after death, you are just dreaming.
You can't have your cake and eat it too.
Right. You don't understand the religion you claim to follow. You have to choose your jurisdiction.
So, lesser gods are preoccupied middle management. Buddha is strictly focused on the afterlife. Secular science is a roaring engine with no steering wheel, just hurtling us blindly toward nuclear and biological catastrophe. Where does this leave us? What is the ultimate conclusion of this text?
The conclusion is actually delivered as a highly specific ultimatum.
An ultimatum.
Yes. The author claims that since the year 2013, humanity has been standing at a definitive, unavoidable crossroads.
2013. Why that specific year? That seems so random.
Well, the text uses it as a hard psychological and spiritual deadline. It represents a tipping point in our technological capability versus our spiritual maturity. And the choice presented is entirely binary.
Which is?
If humanity actively prioritizes serving the greatest creator, the text promises we will enter a glorious, unprecedented era of sustainable development. But
There's always a bet.
if we stubbornly continue to ignore this existence, relying only on our engine, then the great crisis Laozi warned about, that modern equivalent of the Great Flood, will inevitably arrive.
Man. We spent this entire time unpacking just one single chapter, right? The 40th piece of evidence regarding the rise and decline of human civilization. But this is just a fraction of a much larger body of work. How does this single argument fit into the broader synthesis of the 40 proofs?
The summary of the source material actually gives us a glimpse into the staggering scope of this project. Interestingly, the author notes that they originally set out to find 50 distinct phenomena to prove the existence of the greatest creator.
But they decided to stop at 40.
Yeah, upon reflection, the author realized that 40 phenomena were more than enough to make an airtight case. And when you look at the breadth of those 40 proofs, I mean, it covers almost every facet of existence.
It really does. The text says these proofs range from massive macroscopic realities, like the precise movement of celestial bodies and the mathematical allocation of resources across the Earth.
Oh, and all the way down to microscopic marvels, like the intricacies of human brain structure and the unexplainable brilliance of basic animal instincts.
And it doesn't even stop at the physical sciences. The author dives deep into the abstract and the experiential, too.
Exactly. The proofs utilize the operation of life itself, the pinnacle of aesthetics and beauty, supernatural phenomena, and even the psychological analysis of dreams.
Dreams, too. Wow.
Yeah. All of these, alongside the profound mysteries of life and death. And our deep dive topic today, the cyclical rise and decline of civilization, they are all presented as reflections of supreme, undeniable wisdom.
It all builds to one core thesis.
Yes. The text concludes with a singular, unwavering statement. The greatest creator, and only the greatest creator, is the guiding light for humanity.
So what does this all mean for us? We've looked at an argument that sweeps across ancient Egypt to modern America, from the evolutionary biology of gorillas to the political survival tactics of the Mao era.
Well, if we synthesize the core message of this specific source text, it is ultimately a profound, urgent warning about the collective psychological state of our society.
The mindset we are all currently trapped in.
Right. According to this author, humanity's greatest existential threat isn't a lack of technological advancement. It isn't that our science isn't good enough yet, or that we haven't invented the right gadgets to save the climate.
So what is it?
The ultimate threat is a catastrophic lack of humility. Science and technology can build the grandest, most complex city imaginable, but only an eternal anchor can keep the inhabitants of that city from letting their own arrogance tear it down from the inside.
It all comes roaring back to that sports car analogy. Science gives us the horsepower. It gives us the momentum to cure diseases and build artificial intelligence, but without a deeply ingrained guiding principle that keeps our collective ego in check.
We are just pressing the gas pedal to the floor.
Exactly, just
Yeah.
hoping the road never ends.
And historically, as the author painstakingly points out, the road always ends. Without the steering wheel, the crash isn't just possible, it's an absolute guarantee.
Which leaves us with a final question for you listening right now. Think about the society you live in today, with all of its incredible technological advancements, its algorithmic feeds, and its deeply complex global crises. If future historians were to look back at our era right now, what would they identify as our eternal anchor? Do we have a shared guiding principle that keeps our collective ego in check? Or are we just driving a really fast sports car without a steering wheel, entirely blind to the cliff approaching in the distance? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the forces that shape our world, and we'll catch you next time.